There are only 3 core pillars to every successful AI lead generation agency, or really every successful service-based business. And if you get these 3 pillars dialed in, you could take your agency to $1 million a year, $2 million a year, or however big you want to grow it. And if you just have 1 or 2 of these pillars missing, then it can be almost impossible to get your agency off the ground, let alone to scale it to $1 million or more a year. And so in this video, I want to talk about what those 3 pillars are. And at the end of the video, I want to tell you kind of what order you should be focusing on with these 3 pillars to make sure that you get the best results for you and your agency. So the first pillar I want to talk about in today's video is sales. And that can seem pretty obvious to a lot of people. If you're not selling your service, then you don't really have an agency. But I think a lot of people have the wrong idea when they start thinking about sales. Now, when most people think about sales, they think about high pressure sales pitches or gimmicks or sales tactics. And I don't really look at sales from that lens at all. For me, sales is much more about this one thing that when I learned about this, it completely changed the way that I approach sales. And I think it's so much more powerful than any amount of sales training could ever be. And if you have this one thing in your corner when you're on a sales call with a prospect, then it will make your job so much easier. And it really changed the game for me. And that one thing is conviction. And in a nutshell, conviction is just believing yourself that you can actually help the person that you are selling to. And the easiest way for me to kind of bring this point home is to draw an analogy. And this is sort of an extreme analogy, but bear with me. Let's say, for example, that your neighbor had cancer and they were a close family or a friend of yours, and I came to you with a cure to cancer in a pill. And let's just assume that you believed me and that this pill really could cure cancer. And I told you that you had to sell this pill to your neighbor for $1,000 or you come back empty-handed. Well, what are the chances that you think that you couldn't make that sale to your neighbor? Probably very low. You probably would come back with the $1,000. And you would probably get really creative if they didn't want to buy it from you at first, right? Maybe you'd offer financing or try to say, hey man, we could finance this together. And if they couldn't get financing because their credit was so bad, maybe you would say, hey man, I'll just loan you the $1,000 myself. Just please take this pill. I want to see you get better. This is going to cure you completely. Please just take the pill, right? I'll give you, maybe you wouldn't even finance it. Maybe you would just give them the $1,000 because you cared that much. They were very close to you and you just wanted them to be better. Maybe you would just pay for it yourself. The point being is that when you have so much conviction in what you're providing to somebody as a service or a product, that it becomes so much easier to sell that. And obviously we're selling marketing. We're not selling a cure to cancer. So it's not apples to apples, right? But the same principle rings true that conviction should be the backbone of your sales approach, or at least it's the backbone of mine. And I also want to be upfront that this kind of idea or this framework doesn't work in every industry. If you look at used car dealerships or car salespeople, they might try to sell somebody who only makes $40,000 a year a $40,000 car, right? Which is just a terrible financial decision for the person buying the car, but it happens every day in America. I think cars are one of the leading causes of poverty and people perpetually living paycheck to paycheck in America and never building wealth is because they have these huge car payments and insurance on the cars and things like that. And it's hard in that industry to have conviction that what you're selling somebody is truly going to improve their lives and is a great decision for them to make. And so car salespeople might have to rely much more heavily on sales tactics and pitches and things like that because they can't rely on conviction. And that's where you get people like Andy Elliott, who's teaching everybody all these sales tactics and yada yada. And I'm not here to crap on Andy or anything like that, but it's just not been the way that I like to approach sales. I would much rather approach it from a conviction standpoint. And it's important to note that everything's not in black or white. You don't have to be a car salesman or selling a cure to cancer. My brother, for example, sells RVs, and his customers are not broke people. They have money. Some of them are lawyers or doctors, or they have millions of dollars in the bank, and they can afford to drop $200,000 on an RV. And they might need a little push to go over the edge to actually make that buying decision. Maybe they're almost there, but they need those sales tactics and those methodologies to help them drive home the sale for. And maybe my brother's trying to paint a picture of the road trips that they could go on and the campfires they could have and the memories that they might have with their kids or their grandkids. And that helps them to get that emotional reaction to make that buying decision. And that's great. And that's all fine and dandy. And something similar could be said about what I do with me trying to get a contractor over the edge to work with me by employing some sales tactics and things like that. But having conviction be the backbone of your sales is a game changer. I did sales before I started my own marketing agency. I did sales for a roofing company, and we were one of the most expensive roofing companies in my city, in my area. And I felt like it was an uphill battle to sell to people because I didn't really have the conviction that we were worth 20% more than the other roofing company, especially if we had problems or anything like that. And I could try to sell let's say I'm selling to a general contractor who's building a new home, and I'm selling him on, hey, let's use our company for the roofing part of the build, right? We want to put on the roof for you. Well, I could sell myself on, hey, I'm going to pick up on the first ring when you call. I want to make sure that if you text me, I text you back immediately. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. I'm going to be there in your corner and give you amazing customer service. But I didn't really have that same framework for my company. I didn't have that same belief that we were worth more money than anybody else. And so it was very hard for me to do the sort of sales. And it's so much easier to do sales from a place of conviction. Even when I started my agency, for the first 3 months, I was trying to sell to people for $2,000 a month or $2,500 a month. And I wasn't getting anywhere. Nobody was buying from me. And it wasn't until I just started giving out free trials that things really exploded for me. And it was because I could have so much more conviction in what I was selling. If what I did worked, the client of mine could win big. I could turn $1 into $5, $1 in ad spend into $5 in profit for them. And if I lost, well, at least I could tell them I tried my best, and I really did. And I put in the work, and I worked for free. It can't get better than that, right? I did everything I could, and I did it for free. It's the easiest pitch to give to somebody. And so having that conviction, I started getting results and everything started flowing. And I think that is really the game changer for a lot of people. And if you could sell something with conviction, then you should go that route, because it's going to be much better than trying to sell with tactics or things like that. And that brings me to the second pillar I want to talk about in this video, which is fulfillment and service delivery, right? So now that we've sold the client, we actually have to deliver on the service. And this is actually where a lot of new beginners get hung up for too long. And that's on trying to perfect your service delivery before you even have sold it to anybody. And the fact of the matter is you're going to get better at delivering your service as you get more clients. And that you just don't have enough clients to really test anything out to begin with. I remember when I had my very first client and it didn't work out, I was devastated. I thought that this whole business model was a scam and that, everything I was doing was for nothing. But I stayed with it, and then I realized that, I just didn't have enough information yet to really make that determination of whether or not this could work or it couldn't. And the analogy I like to bring up to a lot of people is, imagine I gave you a quarter and I told you to flip the quarter or the coin 10 times, and you got heads 7 times and you got tails 3 times. Well, you might make the determination that you have a 70% chance to get heads and a 30% chance to get tails. But that we know is factually false. You have a roughly 50-50 chance of getting both. And the reason you came to the wrong conclusion was because you just didn't flip the coin enough times. If you flipped the coin 100 times or 1,000 times, you would have seen that the chances of you getting heads or tails is roughly the same. But because you only flipped it 10 times, you thought that one of the heads or tails was more likely than the other. And that's the same to be said about when you're running ads for your clients. If you don't have enough clients, if you only have 2 or 3 clients, you don't really have a big enough pool to test from compared to when you have 20 clients or 25 clients. Then you can really start to see what works across different markets. But don't focus so much on your service delivery, at least at first. And that's not like I'm telling you to do a bad job or not do your due diligence or not try very hard once you get that first client to deliver amazing results. You should do all of those things. But service delivery should not be your first priority, at least in the beginning. You need to dial in your sales to even have the chance to get good at service delivery, and you will get better over time. And that brings me to the third and final pillar, which is going to be marketing. And in my viewpoint, marketing is actually the most important pillar out of the 3, and it's not even close. And that's because just like you need to have sales in order to get good at service delivery, you have to have your marketing dialed in to be able to get good at sales. And it can get kind of fuzzy delineating between sales and marketing, especially because you're the only person in your business and you're wearing multiple hats. But it's important to note they are different things. And, they do have some crossover, like if you're cold calling businesses to try to get them to get on a sales call, well, you might be doing some sales while you're doing your marketing, trying to generate those appointments. But they are different things, and there's a lot of different ways you can generate appointments that we'll talk about on this channel. But marketing is so important because it gives you the opportunity to get good at sales. And the easiest way for me to concisely talk about what marketing is marketing is what you're doing to be able to get people to show up on your sales calls. So from my business, for example, I have a very particular place that my sales happens in, and that is on a Zoom call. I wouldn't try to sell somebody my services over the phone. I wouldn't try to sell somebody my services in a text message conversation. I just know that my chances of selling are so abysmally low that I wouldn't even try. I would try to sell them on meeting me over Zoom so that I could actually properly present my story, my company, what makes us different, our results, and things like that. And the same can be true for other industries. We were talking about car sales and RV sales earlier. Those sales events typically happen at the dealership. They're not trying to sell you the car over the phone. I mean, that can happen, but most of the time, those salespeople are selling at the dealership, right? And people are coming there with a small inclination that they could be sold. Even if you go into the car dealership and you told yourself the morning of that you're going there just to test drive, you're not going to buy a car, you're going to look and you're going to come back home and you're going to think about it. Well, you could go to the car dealership, but you know that there's a very small chance that you could be sold right then and there. If the stars align and the car was amazing and they gave you a dirt cheap price and everything was great, there's a small chance you could be sold. And the same thing is true when I meet with a potential client over Zoom. Even if they've decided in their head that they are not going to buy from me that day, if I present well enough, if I have a great discovery phase in my call and I can help them with their problem, then sometimes they'll make a buying decision right then and there, even if they didn't plan to. And so marketing is what gets people to show up on these sales calls in the environment that you can make a sale with a small kernel in the back of their mind that they could be sold. And the reason it's the most important is because if you do marketing really, really well, then you'll have enough opportunities to sell that you'll get better at sales. And if you sell enough, you'll get better at service delivery, and then the flywheel will continue. But marketing is, in my opinion, the most important. It's also one of the hardest things to learn about doing in your own business. I'm much better at marketing for my clients than I am at even marketing my own business, which is kind of weird when you think about it. But that's kind of the reason that marketing is so important, is everything flows downstream from marketing. And you might think that if you have an amazing service delivery, you have an amazing service, that it makes marketing easier, and it does, but it doesn't solve your marketing problem. Let's say that I can take $1 from my client and turn it into $10, which is pretty good, especially if that's all profit. Well, even if you had a service that could do 10x what I can do, you can make them $100 for every dollar. It doesn't magically start making you have sales calls. You still have to find a way to tell people about it and get them to believe what you're saying, because now it might even seem like it's a fantasy. You can't make, thousands and thousands of dollars from a single dollar, right? And if it seems too good to be true, you might not even get people to respond to your cold emails about it or whatever the outreach method you're doing is. So I say all that to say, just because you have an amazing service, you haven't really solved your business problem. But if you have amazing marketing, you can get people on sales calls and have that opportunity to sell, you can get better at everything else down the line. So again, I think marketing is the most important out of the three, but they are all important. And if you have these three things dialed in your business, then it makes it almost impossible for you to fail. And you are certainly going to hit whatever number it is that you are after every single month. You can make $1 million your business, a $2 million business, or even bigger than that if you get these three pillars dialed in. So I hope that helped, and I hope that helps to crystallize some ideas if you're just starting off, or if you're already an established agency owner. This should ring true. So if you're excited to start and grow your own AI lead generation agency, then you're in the right place, because that's all we talk about on this channel, and we have a lot more to come. So if that's interesting to you, make sure you turn on notifications, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.